Alright, hello again, this is Jeff Scott. I've been talking HTML5 and CSS3, taking a little detour into JavaScript and jQuery land with you. And we left off last time on, I'd say about page, of course I turned the page, but we left off on Chapter 15, on page 512. Alright, so that's what I'm going to be going through right now. I've been still having some problems with my machine here that I'm going to try to rectify as we're talking here. Alright, so let's see how this works. Alright, the next part of this chapter talks about jQuery. jQuery, again, is a JavaScript library. If we want to go out and find out virtually everything that is jQuery, as you probably guess, we go out to jQuery.com. Now, this site, it's a good site, and there's a lot of different stuff in it, so I want to talk about a few of the things that are in here. First of all, as you notice, we can download jQuery by clicking the button right here. And when we do this, we have actually a bunch of different ways that we can download it. We can download versions that start with 1 or versions that start with 2. The difference is if we download these versions that start with a 1, they support Internet Explorer 6, 7, and 8. If we start and do the ones that start with a 2, they don't support 6, 7, and 8. Now jQuery 3 is also coming up very soon. Okay, just so you know that. And when we go and let's say we wanted to have support for JavaScript 6, 7, and 8. Okay? We can now, when we do this, we can either download this in what's called a compressed version, so it looks like this, and you look at it, you go, oh my gosh, what the heck is that? Alright, and let's see if we can open it. Can we open the link in a new window? There it is. What the compressed version means is it's been minified. All of the unnecessary white space has been removed. And you say, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Well, you can also grab the uncompressed one. You can see how different it is. This file is the same file as the other one. Alright, the difference is in here the white space has been kept. The chances are virtually 100% that you will not ever want to change anything in this jQuery file. You'll want to use things that are in the jQuery file, but you won't want to change things that are in the jQuery file. So the recommendation is, if you're going to download jQuery, that you actually come in and you download the minified version. Alright, so you'll notice in this case it's called jQuery-1.12.4.min.js. You can rename that anything you want if you want to do that. And it's not that you do or do not have to do that. Alright, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, what if you don't want to download it at all? Well, then you can use what's called a content delivery network. So if I want to make jQuery available to me, I can come down here and the CDNs, let's see, using jQuery with a CDN. I'm going to go to the Google one that's right here. Alright, so I can put in this line of code into my HTML file, and that will include jQuery for me. So then so the advantage is then I don't have to download the file myself. Alright, so that's the advantage. The big disadvantage is, if I do it this way, I need an internet connection. Because if I don't have an internet connection, this isn't going to work. Alright, so they're all things that you have to think about. But I want to jump back again into the jQuery. And forgetting about the download for just a second. Okay, I want to go back to jQuery.com. Alright. So what is jQuery? It's a fast, small, and feature-rich JavaScript library. And more than anything else, it works with CSS cascading style sheet, selectors. All right, if you want more information, I can go over here and I can get the core API documentation. Well, what is that? Well, that's going to give me basically information on everything that the language is about. They're all the methods that I can use, and you can see they're nice. They're in alphabetic order, and as I peruse my way down here, there are several of them. I've never counted. I've never had the desire to count. All right, so that's one thing we can do. There's a jQuery Learning Center, and the idea is, if you go through that, it's kind of an online tutorial that talks about a lot of different things. There are some recommended books that are in there, and there's some other stuff also. All right. There's other sites that you can go to, but this is a very good place to get started. All right. So I'll leave it right there and jump back in then into the slides. So what jQuery does is it offers just a big plethora, so many methods that are designed so that you have less JavaScript to write. These methods, as it mentions in that second bullet there, have been tested for cross-browser compatibility. I already showed you how you can either include the line here or you can include it through a CDN. Okay? All right. Now, if we look at this, there's a lot of stuff in this slide, even though it's a small slide. jQuery also uses that $ alias. Don't worry about what it's used for, it just uses it. What this says in English is select all H2 tags. This says select anything with an ID of email address. This says select anything with a class of warning. You're going to see more and more examples of this as we go on. So here they're showing you how you can get an email address from a text box. And I probably didn't say that before. I don't really remember if I did or not, but in fact, I guess I did. So when you look at this, move this out just a tad here if I can. All right. So we've got this, oops, right here, and I also want to show it here. Squeeze or compress this down a bit. All right. So now notice we've got var email address equals $email address dot val. So all we've really gained there is val instead of value. All right, so it looks very similar to the way that you could do it in straight JavaScript, but using that $ alias. So it doesn't really there look all that much like it's buying you anything. All right. You can again get it by putting it on the right-hand side of an equal sign, set it by putting it on the left-hand side of an equal sign. All right. Quite often what you're going to end up doing is you're going to write a bunch of your code and you're going to put it in this document.ready function. Why? Because that function basically fires when the document is ready for you to act on it. So everything that has to be loaded is indeed loaded. All right? So the syntax looks a little weird, but when you look at it, it's document.ready, and then the function is what's inside of these parens. That's the beginning paren, that's the ending paren. So it's an anonymous function, a no-name function. That curly brace starts there and ends there, and it will just alert you that indeed the DOM is ready. Here, how to code the click event. Well, this says if I click any H2, run this function. Again, that parenthesis starts there and ends there. That curly brace starts there and ends there. All right, so any H2 heading you happen to click with this, it's going to come back and it's going to say this heading has been clicked. There's also something, again, you can combine this stuff together, in other words, okay? And you're going to see more and more of this. So jQuery uses the basic CSS cascading style sheet selectors. jQuery has its own methods, and jQuery has its own events that it responds to. So what they want to do in the chapter next, again, I want to make sure that I go over all this stuff for completeness sake. So on 5.13, jQuery is a free open source JavaScript library used by more than 50% of the top 10,000 most visited websites. The jQuery download comes in two versions, a minified, which is a compressed version, which is relatively small and loads fast, and an uncompressed version, where you can use it to actually look at the code. If you include the jQuery file from a CDN or content delivery network, you don't have to provide it from your own server, but you must be online to work on it. If you download jQuery onto your file system, you can change the file name if you want to, but you don't have to. And in what we just covered, when you use jQuery, the $ again is used to refer to the jQuery library. Then you can code jQuery selectors by using CSS syntax within quotation marks within the parentheses. To call a jQuery method, you quote a selector, the dot operator, the method name, and parameters within parentheses. Then the method is applied to the element or elements selected by the selector. To code a jQuery event handler, you code the selector, the dot operator, the name of the event method, and a function that handles the event within parentheses, so it's very similar. The event handler for the ready event method will run any methods and that it contains, and it will do that as soon as the DOM is ready, even if the browser still has images to load or other page content. So what they do next in here is they rebuild the same email list thing that we looked at before, and they do it using jQuery instead of using JavaScript. Now, the only line that changes in the HTML, as far as I know, all right, is the script line, because now you must add in here, you must add jQuery, all right? So other than that, we still have our JS line underneath here, but we've added this one. I think other than that nothing has changed, all right? So let's look at the actual jQuery, and that's on page 519. So this is the code in the email list.js file. So this is, we have to change the code we had in there previously to add this. Now you'll notice if you look that it's on 3 pages here, but if you look here, this document.ready starts here and it ends here. So everything is inside of the document.ready. So again, what it's telling us is the same kind of thing that we looked at before, and that is that when the document has been loaded, all right, this is what we had at the end before, but this says basically that join list. When we click that button, what are we doing? The same kind of thing we did before. We're grabbing the value from the first text box. We're grabbing the value from the second text box. We're setting our Boolean variable. That's all basically the same, except, almost identical. How's that? Then we validate the first email address. Same kind of way we did it before, but again, syntactically, it's different. Then and if it's blank, we put down the field is required, and we set our is valid to false. All right. Otherwise, we set that error area to nothing. Same kind of way we did it before. Then we look at the second one, and we say if that's empty, we do a similar kind of thing. But if we get down to the else, then we want to make sure that the first email address that we put in and the second email address that we put in were identical. So if they're not, we add this error, much as we did before. If this isn't true, then that means that the email address wasn't blank. If this isn't true, that means we put in the same thing for the first and second. So if that's the case, we again set our error area to nothing. All right. Then we validate the first name, very similar to the way we validated it previously. And again, if it's empty, we say it's required, and we set is valid to false. Otherwise, there's something in there. Okay, so we set the error area to false. If everything was valid, meaning we never hit this, if we never hit that is valid equal false, that is valid equal false, that is valid equal false, or that is valid equal false. If we never hit any of those, then this line where we set it to true is still the line that's in question. It's still true. So we come in here and we say, fine, submit the form. And that's it. So again, we've kind of rewritten this. Not kind of, we have rewritten it, that rather than using HTML and JavaScript and CSS, we're using HTML, JavaScript, jQuery, and CSS. All right, and our JavaScript is basically our jQuery that we're writing. So what you should notice, I'm not going to go take the time to copy it again, but if I come over here and I come back, so here's my, I wanted to change this before, so I'm going to. There's my chapter 1 stuff that we did earlier. There's the chapter 2 stuff that we did earlier. There's the chapter 3 stuff that we've been working on right now. All right, so we've got all this stuff in here. So I'm going to say, I'm going to call this email list JS for JavaScript. And I'm going to put that email list HTML, this email list, I'm going to put those in here. All right. Then I'm going to create another folder, I should say, that's called email list-jQuery. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go into my source that's on the P drive. So CIS 152, 157, fall 2016 source code, book apps, and I've got to find the book apps for chapter 15. And this will be the email list underscore jQuery. So I'll copy, in fact, I'll open that, copy all that information, and paste it into here. All right, so now if I come in and actually run my HTML file, this looks exactly the same. It operates the same. All right, if I put an email address in here, and the one that I put in here is not identical, I get that same error that we had before. If I leave the name field blank, I get the same error I got before. If everything is put in, it reacts the same way that it did previously. So the point is, nothing has really changed. Notice I gave them a thank you on this too. Okay? All right, let's finish up the chapter. We have just a few more pages to go. So in these examples that are right here, and I don't know why it's not there, I think, 3 images with the middle image rolled over. So the rest of the chapter presents a few applications: an image rollover example, an image swap example, a slideshow example. All right, so it gives you 3 different examples here of things that you might do using jQuery. And the first is an image rollover. So let's do this. Let's again go back to our P drive material. All right, and I'm going to grab the image rollover, the image swap, and the slideshow. I'm just going to grab all those, copy them to the clipboard, come back into my chapter 15, not chapter 15. Come back into, don't want that. Come back into my chapter 3 stuff, which is right here, and just paste it in. All right, so the first one they talk about is this rollover. So let's look at it, and then we'll discuss it. Do you notice how when I take my mouse and I move it around, all right, it changes the picture that's in there. Okay? The focus on this is on being able to use these applications and not worry so much about the code. So you don't really need to understand the code in this. You just have to include the jQuery library and the JavaScript file. So you could use this anywhere. Really, when the user hovers the mouse pointer over one of the starting images, it's replaced by another image. And when the user moves the mouse pointer out of the image, the original image is redisplayed. This is also known as an image rollover. All right. So the actual code for this is shown in the book here, right there. All right. It's on page 521 of the book. The key takeaway from this is an example of you being able to pretty much just copy in a bunch of jQuery code, make superficial changes to it, and get it to do what you want it to do. Let's look at another example, and this is an image swap example. All right. So let's take a look at this one. We'll again do the same kind of thing. I'm going to go over, and instead of image rollover, I'm going to go out to image swap and open that one up. Now notice what happens. You can see what's on here. That's this picture. Notice what happens when I click, for example, this one. And you can see exactly what's happening there. To use this application, you've got to set up your HTML and set the ID of the UL element to be an image list, and the ID of the H2 element to basically be a caption that you want to go along with it, and that's this right here. Notice how that changes every time. Next, you set the href attribute for each A tag or anchor tag element in the unordered list to the large image, and set its title attribute to the caption. So it's a chance for you to take thumbnails and be able to click on the thumbnails and have like a thumbnail gallery. And it doesn't have to be something as small as this. It could be a listing of cars. It could be a listing of basically anything that you needed it to be. All right. And the final example that's shown in this chapter is a slideshow. This is one of the things that jQuery is most known for. So if we run this, notice what happens. I'm not going to touch it. You see that the current slide fades out and a new slide fades in. So to use this application, you have to set the IDs for the H2 element, shown with a code on page 525, the main image element, and the div element to caption, slide, and slides. Then you put the images for the slideshow in. So again, the bottom line for this is what you're able to do by just plugging in, and that's one of the reasons they're called plugins, existing code, and you may or may not have to make some minimal modifications. All right, so we're just about through here. So the code is shown in the chapter here. I'm not going over it right now. This is not a jQuery class. All right, I do want to look at the slide right here. A website that offers free JavaScript code, dynamicdrive.com. These are recommendations by one of the authors of this book, who is Zach Ruvalcaba, if I pronounced that correctly. And he recommends going to either dynamicdrive.com or to the JavaScript source. Let's face it, there are thousands, if not millions, of websites you can go to find JavaScript and jQuery code. All right. One of the problems with the code you get from many of these sites is it's often hard to figure out how to use it. Another problem can be that these sites often provide code that you embed in the HTML, which can make it more difficult to work with. So now that we've gone through this chapter, you should have at least a minimal understanding. All right, you should have at least, so there's JavaScript, yeah. That's all stuff at the end of the chapter. All right, so now that you've gone through this, you should each at least have a minimal understanding of how you can use JavaScript in a website. Again, it's a client-side scripting language. How you can use the JavaScript library jQuery also on a web page. Okay, in the next chapter, we will go over the jQuery UI, which is the jQuery user interface, and some of the well-known jQuery plugins that you can use and add to web pages. The only other thing I want to say before I stop this, which I am going to do and I don't want to save, but I'm going to go out here to jQueryui.com. Now, I do want to mention, I believe that if you count these along the side here, I could be wrong, but at least there used to be, I believe, 29 different examples. I would strongly suggest that you look at those examples because what they have here, for instance, I've talked before about an accordion. If I click here, it shows an example. This is an accordion. Okay? And if I want to, I can go down to where it says View Source and click that button. Then I can grab all of the code that's in there, literally, grab every bit of it, okay, that you see here. I guess those other 2 lines too. Copy it to the clipboard. I'm going to close these files here. And in my new file, I'm just going to open this up and I'm going to save this. I'll save it to, in fact, let's come in here and let's, whoops, I don't want to do that. I'm going to make myself a new folder that's called Chapter 16. Because that's what we're going to go over next. All right? And in there, I'm just going to save this, and I'm just going to call it accordion.html. Okay? So you see it in there. Now, all I have to do is run it. I don't know why it's taken that long, but it is. All right, it's still missing something, but the accordion is all set up. What I wanted to get across to you, and my guess is there's probably some CSS in here. There it is. So I'll have to grab these. Oh, I'll have to fix these files, that's all. Okay, I'll have to grab that file, the CSS, and then fix these files. See how it has // I need to put an HTTP in front of that. So let me do that. So here, HTTP : that'll fix that line. Here, HTTP : that'll fix that line. All right. What I want to get across to you is this is all the jQuery in the whole thing. It just says take the div that we called accordion, which starts here, div accordion, and it ends here, and run the accordion method on it. That's the whole thing that's here. Now I've got to find this resources demos because otherwise it's probably going to look pretty ugly. So let me go back to this. Right mouse click, view page source, and there it is. Style.css, I think that's it. Control A, Control C to copy. Put it in here. I'm going to just save this. I'm not going to worry about formatting it or anything else. I'm just going to call it style.css. Okay, then I've got to come back to this file, and all this has to stay is style.css. All right, so how long did it take me to make those changes? 2 or 3 minutes. Run it in Chrome. See if it looks a little nicer now. All right. it's still missing, looks like some of the CSS. So there might be another CSS file, but it's totally workable. The reason I just took time out to tell you that is I want you to understand that you are strongly encouraged to go out to the jQuery UI, grab this code, copy it, modify it to your own desires. All right? So we'll come back and talk about that in a matter of moments.